All right, let us begin. So we are continuing Yemir Hashem this morning in Os Mem Zayin. So remember again, yesterday we started this really beautiful piece where HaTzaddik begins to highlight the concept that there's no such thing as a quote-unquote bad midah. Every single midah, every single character trait, every single attribute, every single koach that a person possesses is not good or not bad, but rather based on the fundamental decision about how a person chooses to use it. So today we're going to delve into that a little bit, and actually HaTzaddik is going to give some specific concrete examples. So he goes on. So we're picking up on page Kuftes, and we're picking up in the Be'uri HaChasidus on the left-hand side. So he says, Rak tzarech ha'adam, probably about 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, about 12 lines up from the bottom. Rak tzarech ha'adam liros, Ketzad lifol b'chol mida mimidosav la'asiyas ratzon Hashem kach sheyishtamish ba b'chol tchuna umida sheyesh b'nafsho kafi ratzon Hashem yisbarach v'zeu tzad hatov sheba. So HaTzaddik says, therefore a person has to look at every single midah he possesses and figure out how to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the good within that midah. It's such a profound way of looking at things. Every midah, every character trait has potential for good or for bad within it. So my job is lav dafka to eradicate midos, to uproot midos, but rather it's to channel kochos, to channel my strengths, to look at a particular midah. Is there something positive in this midah that I can rechannel it towards? And that becomes my avoda. V'zeu tzad hatov sheba. To find the tzad hatov, the aspect of good, the element of good, the point of good within every single midah, and rechannel my koach in that direction. Also, as I mentioned in yesterday's shir, remember, I want to point out, just for the sake of intellectual honesty, not everyone agrees with this approach of HaTzaddik. Many of the Sifrei Musar take the approach that, no, there are bad midos. There are bad midos. And so you have to go ahead and uproot bad midos. HaTzaddik comes from the vantage point that if you tell someone to uproot a midah, I'm not going to say it's impossible. Nothing's impossible. But it becomes an overwhelming task. Anyone who's ever engaged in personalistic change knows that to change a midah, like the Ramchal writes, it's easier to learn the entire Torah than it is to go ahead and change one midah. What HaTzaddik is suggesting is you don't have to necessarily uproot midos. You have to rechannel kochos. You have to rechannel your energies. What's the koach hatov sheba? What's the good? What's the good that you could find in any particular character trait or koach? And then utilize that. He gives examples. He says, Vim eino mishtamish betchunas nafsho kfi ratzon Hashem yisbarach. But if a person doesn't use his personalistic strengths in accordance with the will of Hashem, ela kfi mashetiv o nota elav umoshcho. But instead, a person just allows themselves to be pulled after their nature, as gam hamidos tovos hatvuos bo him begeder midos ros. So remember, this works the opposite way also. The same way that if I have negative traits, negative characteristics, negative kochos, I have to find, in the word of HaTzaddik, the tzad hatov sheba. I have to find the good application, the good use for my negative kochos, for my negative midos. So the converse is true as well. You could have something that is a positive trait, a positive koach, but if you don't actively channel it in the direction of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it can become something negative. He'll give examples of this. He says, K'mosh Amru Chazal, both is very profound, Al Shaul HaMelech, King Shaul, Shene'enash K'mosh Shene'emar, Vayomas Shaul Ushloshes Banov. So remember, Shaul, not just Shaul, but Shaul and his 3 sons, die in the war against the Plishtim. Why did he die? So the HaTzaddik writes, Ba'avor, the Navi tells us explicitly, Ba'avor harachmano sherichem al hanoshim ba'ataf shal Amalek. Because remember again, Shaul was charged with destroying and wiping out Amalek, and instead he has compassion. He leaves the women, the livestock, v'kemosha amru chazal, shekomi shena'asa rachaman b'makom b'komach zari, sof shemidas, page kof yod, kof shemidas adin pogasra. Also listen to these words of Chazal. The words of Chazal is, whoever becomes compassionate in a place, in a situation where you have to become cruel, Sof Shemidas Hadin Pogaspa. He will be judged harshly. So we'll say, let's talk about this story for just a moment. In the footnotes, so they discuss this story. We're familiar with this story. Shaul is given the opportunity, is given the mandate to destroy Amalek. And what happens? Remember again, the Gemara Masechet Sota points out that Shaul made a kal v'chomer. Remember again, what was this kal v'chomer? He says, we have a concept in the Torah called Egla Arufa. And Egla Arufa means if you go ahead and you find one dead person in between two cities, there's a whole process, right? The elders of the closest city come out, decapitated calf, the nachal, wash their hands. So Shaul says, how could I go in? I understand I have to wipe out the men. They're the combatants. But how could I wipe out the women, the children, the livestock? So he spared them. Then I will say, now again, is compassion a good midah? Of course it's a good midah. But compassion is only a good midah if it's used in accordance with the ratzon, with the will of Hashem. If compassion is used against the directive of Hashem, then compassion becomes a terrible midah. So while it's true, while we certainly all emotionally understand what Shaul was saying, he was given a mandate. See, I will say, what this really comes down to is as follows. If you want to kind of drill down a little bit, which is what determines our moral compass, which is a very important question to ask ourselves, because sometimes we don't necessarily realize the extent to which we are influenced, and understandably so, by the society around us, right? For example, if you look at the command that Hashem gave Shaul, or for that matter, the command that the Torah gives us towards Amalek. So today, what would they call that today? They'd call it genocide, right? Going in and wiping out an entire nation, men, women, children, just genocide. It's genocide. And again, moral, immoral. Again, how you look at it, you say, how immoral. I will say, again, I think it's normal, by the way, like Shaul's struggle with this is totally normal. The shaila just is, what defines your code of morality? Is your code of morality, is my code of morality defined by what appears moral to me, what appears moral to society around me, which are generally very fluid principles, right? My morality is fluid, society's morality is fluid, or is morality decided by what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says is moral? So we'll say, so what HaTzaddik is saying is like this: every midah is useful if it's used in accordance with the Ratzon Hashem. But the moment ultimately, again, that my midah is not used in accordance with the Ratzon Hashem, so then even the, what we'll call objectively good midos, become fundamentally corrupted. So Rachmanis, compassion, empathy, sensitivity for the other, of course, we assume is a good midah, true, as long as it's used in accordance with the will of Hashem. But the moment it's used just in accordance with my own sensitivities, right, or my own hashkafas, or my own morality, that's when it can become corrupted. And I will say, it's a very difficult, the story with Shaul is a very, very difficult story, because he absolutely meant well and was motivated by a sincere sense of compassion. But compassion is only good when it's used to carry out the Ratzon Hashem. But the moment that it's used to carry out my agenda and not God's agenda is ultimately, again, even when the best of midos can become corrupted. So, quote unquote, negative traits can be positive when channeled to accomplish something productive in accordance with the will of Hashem. And positive traits can become corrupted, ultimately, again, when used against the will of Hashem. He gives another example. He says, Ukimokin Amru Chazal, we'll stop with this. Ukimokin Amru Chazal begin. Listen to the profound story. Sha'an Visanuso Shrabi Zechariah ben Avkolus. So the end of the story is, or the end of the sentence is, and Visanuso Shrabi Zechariah ben Avkolus Hechriva es Beisenu Visarfa es Hechalenu Viglisam Yersen. So also we are familiar with the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa very, very quickly. So again, remember, we know that this, well, I'm not going to go through the entire story, but the point over here is the Caesar was told the Jews are rebelling, so remember he sent a carbon to be offered in the Beis HaMikdash. On the way, Bar Kamsa goes ahead and splits the lip, or causes a cataract. Machlokes in the Gemara. He does something which renders the animal unfit to be offered. So imagine the scene. You have a blemished animal from the Caesar which arrives in the Beis HaMikdash. So we'll say, so again, All the Rabbanim are saying, offer it. You got to offer it. It's sakanas nefashos. Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos comes along and says, no, you can't offer it. Why? Yomru, people will say you could offer up a blemished animal on the Beis HaMikdash. They said, fine. You don't offer it? Fine. And he was the God Ladar. Fine. Kill Bar Kamsa. Kill Bar Kamsa. We'll say, ultimately, again, yeah, you could kill him. Why? He was a Moser. He was a Moser. He was maligning the Jewish people to the Gentile government. Kill Bar Kamsa. To which again Zechariah ben Avkalos said, you can't kill Bar Kamsa. Why? Because people are going to say that matile mum b'kodshim chayiv misa, that if you inflict a blemish on a sacrificial animal, you chayiv misa. So we'll say, so what did they end up doing? Nothing. So they didn't offer the carbon. They didn't kill Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa goes back to the Caesar and says, oh, you see, I told you, look, they didn't offer up your carbon. They clearly rebelled against it. And I will say that was at the beginning of the end. So it's actually a very striking Gemara because Chazal lay the blame for the Churban at the feet of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos, which I will say, of course, is very dramatic also because we know the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed for a variety of different reasons. Yet, Chazal lay the blame at the feet of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos. And they say, what caused this? Anvisanuso. How would you translate anvisanuso? Humility. So this is an interesting discussion, but Bepashtos, what they were saying is, you were unwilling to take a decisive stand. Now, I both say, Anova, humility. Is humility a good trait? Is humility a good trait? Yeah, of course. Va'ish Moshe Anav Mikal Adam. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu is known as the most humble, so sure, humility is a good trait. But I both say, aren't we beginning to see such a profound idea? Every trait can be good when utilized in the performance of the will of Hashem. Every midah can be good when used for the Ratzon Hashem. And even the greatest of midos can be corrupted, ultimately again when it goes counter to the will of Hashem. So humility is great. Humility is fantastic. Except humility is a terrible avera when the circumstance requires you to take a stand on something and you don't. That's when humility is detrimental. And that's when humility mamish becomes the greatest avera. So we'll stop over here for today. We'll continue Miras Hashem with this theme tomorrow. But I will say it's really just a brand new way. It's a brand new way of looking at a model of change. Because I think for many of us, the way we look at the process of change is, I identify what's broken in me. I don't mean what's broken in someone else. That's always easy and fun to identify what's broken in someone else, right? What's broken and in a state of disrepair in me, and what do I kind of have to uproot and obliterate? And the truth is, so I'm sure all of us have tried this at different points in life. It's very, very, very difficult to uproot a midah. What HaTzaddik is saying is you don't have to uproot stuff. You just have to rechannel. Because there's no midah that's objectively good, or I should say, absolutely good or absolutely bad. Every midah, every koach, if used in conformance with the Ratzon Hashem, by definition could be good. But even the greatest of midos used against the Ratzon Hashem, unfortunately becomes becomes bad. So we'll stop over here. We'll continue Miras Hashem. He gives other examples. Tomorrow, actually, we'll get into the fascinating topic of midos like kas and gaiva, anger and arrogance, which I both say we assume in the world of midos are like, no go. You can't, like the Rambam says, no kas, no gaiva. Reb HaTzaddik is going to show us that no, there are positive applications of kas and gaiva as well, to be continued tomorrow. Shkoyach, I will say.